friends, and welcome to the Clueless Filmmakers Podcast, the show by amateurs for amateurs, spreading the good word of stumbling, bumbling, making mistakes, and not knowing what you're doing until you're suddenly doing it right. Thank you so much for joining us.
That was really impressive.
This day. Thank you. I'm doing
like
much
all
better.
In one breath.
Yeah, I've had a lot of practice doing this. In the very beginning,
do you just do that in the shower,
never.
like every
yes,
day?
Yeah, I just practice that. It's my morning warm-ups. Hey, happy to have you here. Happy for you to be watching. We've had lots of gaps and things. We have shot one episode between now and the one that we did like 6 months ago. And Michael is actually on it, but we had some technical issues.
They watched it again and they were like, "Oh, we can't have Michael."
Michael and Max were just too much. It just didn't work. But someday, maybe you'll see it. See Max's delightful jokes.
Yes.
Max, we gotta have to have him on again. Max is just a special individual.
He's
I love
great.
him.
Yeah.
Anyway, we have with us this person.
I am Michael, the girl Michael.
Girl Michael.
I make films.
I
don't know what you want me to say.
I told you this the other day, but people who those we love it when you're watching our things. You might have been seeing a heck of a lot of Michael and her husband. Potluck Pictures is by and large the Michael and Danny channel at this point in time. It's great.
It's pretty fun.
Everything that we've released. Wait, let me think. No, Warcrafting didn't have you.
I was the first AD on that though. And I'm not in any of the animations.
That's true. Though we haven't put the animations public yet.
Oh, okay.
We're holding those back for now. We're gonna.
I mean, some of these are older, and some of them are more recent. And I think just part of what it is that once certain filmmakers like know certain actors, that like you just use it like Wes Anderson. You just kind of like use them over and over again. And I'm not saying like I'll introduce people to other actors, but sometimes people are like, "Hey, I need an actor." And I'll just say me, because why would I suggest they would use anyone else?
No,
that's not totally.
fair.
I will suggest other people.
Yeah, no. When people ask for a producer, I usually like, well,
Yeah, yeah. I mean, if you can put yourself into something, you should. Career advice from me.
But they are in our stuff for good reason, not just because they're also very convenient. But they're good. They're great.
Convenience has a lot to do with it.
That is a big part of it. But they're also very, very funny individuals who just happen to be convenient to get a hold of. I'm going to go ahead and say literally any role, any film. Like I can find a way to squeeze Michael or Danny in there.
I'm always like. Because Danny's also, like, he's just such, like, a very masculine type.
Mm-hmm. Especially when he gets that beard going.
Yeah, exactly. And not that those don't exist in the acting world, but there's just, like, such a demand for parts like that. And I'm always, like, tagging him in posts on Facebook, like, whenever I can.
I've seen those, yeah.
There was a casting call, and I didn't read it. It said just, like, monk narrator, and I know he wants to do a lot of voiceover work, so I tagged him in it, and then I read the rest of it, and it was like looking for like Asian Buddhist monk. I was like, oh, my bad, and I untagged him because I was just, I don't know, I didn't think anything of. I just saw narrator, but then I was like, monk, what is that? Oh, that's not Danny.
No, not quite.
Yep.
And he also has those amazing eyes going for him.
He does. He really does.
I don't think they truly noticed them until After Us, and I was going through.
I think in After Us they were pumped up a
little bit. Though
not...
I've looked at some of his other Facebook photos. Maybe they were photoshopped to like pump him up then too. But he's got some photos. Like he like squints a lot. I don't know. Like you can't like see the color of his eyes a lot of the time.
He's kind of got. Small
but when you can see
eyes.
them,
like. Yep.
They're very nice.
Yep, and that's my husband.
They're very nice. He's
with the nice eyes.
He's a great husband.
He is.
Yes. Anyway, hey.
I mean, I'll talk about Danny for like ever. So.
the Danny episode.
Yep.
Well, speaking of y'all and doing things, you have a music video that should be put up at the same time this episode is, assuming terrible things don't happen.
I mean, so far it's going pretty well. Fingers crossed. But just finished the rough cut of it. So.
Delightful. You want to just give us a rough like what it is?
I'm gonna move this a little.
Well, by all means.
I don't know. I just want to seem official.
It's cool.
I'm a film person. So Um, basically, Danny and I met doing musical theater and theater together, and so that is a very big part of a lot of our actual passion for acting. We kind of miss being in the theater world because we have been doing so much film stuff lately, which is awesome, but we miss that theatrical part. And one of our favorite shows is Sweeney Todd: The Demon Barber of Fleet Street by Stephen Sondheim. And one of the best songs in this show is A Little Priest, which is basically, it's weird. It like doesn't come until like almost halfway through the show, but it is the song that that makes Sweeney Todd what it is. Because Sweeney Todd, it's not just a musical. It's a famous story of this barber and this pie lady, and they get together and kill people and turn them into pies. And the song
Heartwarming.
Yeah.
Family story.
Family stories.
Yeah.
But the song is basically the moment where they decide that that's what they want to do. So it's kind of a dark comedy song because they're making fun of all different types of people and how they can turn them into pies, and it's full of a lot of puns, and it's just like prime Sondheim work. If you don't know Stephen Sondheim, he wrote Into the Woods. Yeah.
Oh.
And that's his most famous show, but one of his better shows is, in my opinion, Sweeney Todd, just because the writing in it is so clever and so interesting. And a lot of people do know Sweeney Todd because there is the Tim Burton movie of it, which I love.
Speaking of people who like to use a limited number of actors.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And it's very interesting. The Tim, I will admit that I wasn't like a huge fan of it when I first saw the Tim Burton movie. I wasn't a big fan at first, but I just sort of had to realize that he was trying to do his own thing because it was such a different interpretation than the musical versions. But I mean, everyone can have their own interpretation. Like every musical that you would go see would be different, but his was like a much more subdued, toned down version. And that doesn't necessarily make it bad, but it's just sort of a different interpretation of it. And I, as someone who is very interested, who started off in musical theater, and then moved into the film world, I am actually very interested in how they combine. And I think that the Tim Burton version of Sweeney Todd has some really, really great moments of filmed musical, and then I think it has some moments that maybe fall flat. And I don't think it's like the fault of him. I think it's just we're trying, because there was that age like in the 40s and the 50s of like that golden era of Hollywood musicals, and I think nowadays, rightfully so, we're trying to pull away from that. But sometimes maybe people, in my opinion, pull away a little bit too hard, and they're losing that essence of the original musical quality. And I mean, that's not a bad thing. There's oh, what is that musical with the guitar and the two people? Once?
What?
Like, take this sinking... I think it's called Once. Yeah. So there is a musical movie called Once, and it just has two people, and it's like super mellow and really chill, and that's really cool because it's this very modern, interesting musical movie.
Wait, the song got an Academy Award. And,
and now
really,
it is
really
a musical
budget.
now, but it was actually a movie first. And I think those are cool. I'm not saying that like modern musical movies are bad, but I just don't want to lose some of that like original, like I guess maybe pizzazz, like.
Certainly pizzazz.
There's some pizzazz. Yeah. So I wanted to create something that was sort of a good marriage of like the classic golden age theatricality of musicals, and then also sort of the modern subdued musicals, and not subdued, but just the modern more subtle takes on musicals. And I wanted to find sort of an in-between of that, and that's what this is. And Danny and I have always wanted to play Sweeney Todd and Mrs. Lovett, so it's also like a little bit of a vanity project. But basically, we sing this song all the time, and we're like, hey, let's just actually choreograph it and film it, and we'll do it the way that we want it to. And it was very tough going into it because we both had such a strong image of what it should be. And it's really cool because at the like we had such a strong image of what we wanted this to be, and at the same time, we like surpassed what we ever thought it could be, and then also like really fell flat in like a lot of ways. So it's tough going into things with expectations because like you just know they're gonna be shattered. But then it's also really cool when oh, this actually turned out how we thought it could, and that's really cool. So it's been a big learning experience, and I don't think it's bad. I think that we certainly learned a lot from it, and I think that certain parts look amazing, certain parts need work, and but we had a lot of fun. I think people are gonna have fun watching it, and I think we did sort of set out. I think we did accomplish what we sort of set out to do, was to basically just make a fun music video that paid homage to like the original theatrical backgrounds of it, but then also was like a proper film medium.
Yeah, it wasn't the like the standard thing that you usually see of, you know, stage stuff where it's just like a camera like out in the audience.
Yeah, I didn't want it to just be like one camera facing them, but it didn't also, I feel like just a lot of musical movies nowadays, like it's just like two people just sitting there singing a song, like the entire song, and it's not a bad thing, and I think it depends on the song, but like musicals have this, like the whole idea behind a musical is that like people's emotions are so heightened and so big that they can only express it, and they have to like they have to like transform and like ascend. And so when that happens and then people just like sit there and sing the song, it's like, for me at least, it's a little bit weird. And like I said, depending on the show, it could work or not work, but we wanted to try to find a happy marriage of that. That was a lot of words. I hope some of those words
they were good words. They were good selection of words. You talked about pitfalls and things. Like, what are some mistakes that were made, and what have you learned?
Yeah, I mean, I think a big thing was we did a lot of prep going into it.
That's you should for something like that.
Yeah, and
good.
When I direct stuff, I tend to not prep a lot of things, and so I've learned from some of my previous mistakes of basically like improving the camera and blocking and everything like on set. And I was like, okay, I cannot do that this time because it's like gonna be choreographed. And it's interesting because there's the dancing choreography, but then the camera is just as choreographed and is more like the third dancer in the choreography.
That's a great way to
that's how I wanted to see it.
Analogy there, yeah.
And see, like that's sort of what I'm saying is I feel like a lot of times it's this musical movies will do, there's the dancers and then the camera is watching them, or there's like the people aren't moving and then it's like all in the camera. And I think that it's cool to sort of do like an in-between where it's like all three, like there's the dancer, well, it doesn't, I guess there could be more, but like there's the dancers and then the camera is just another part of that dance and that choreography. And that's how we wanted to see it. And there was a lot of prep work going into it. One thing that made it very tough is I was both directing and starring in it. So not only was this a learning experience for music videos for me, but also sort of Orson Wellesing it. And
you had it better earlier, like Ben Stiller.
Ben Stiller,
you know,
like Ben Stiller being in it and also directing it. And I think it turned out really, really good. I'm realizing like none of the shots are bad because I'm part of what it is that I'm realizing that like the DP and I both had our own ideas of what these shots should be, and I think his ideas ended up being really, really great and not even a problem. But because we rushed into it, and we didn't rush into it, but because we didn't have as much prep time as we would have liked, and because I was in it, I didn't want to spend so much time like talking about these other things I didn't need to. And so looking back on it, there's maybe we could have been more efficient if we had like talked about it more beforehand, like each shot and what each shot meant.
Yeah, we've had some production
leading
up to it,
and we did have a couple, but I'm just realizing could have covered that a little bit more because I'm such a like, this is my vision and it feels and is this and it's gonna be about the battle of like rage and seduction and then the DP's like, cool, what lights do you want? And I'm like, what does that mean? So I probably could have done a better job. And one, it just would have made things on set like way more efficient. And then two, like then when I go to edit it, like some of these shots are like, not that they're a surprise, like, oh, it's bad, but it's just like, oh, this probably had a little bit of a different interpretation than I had going into it. Not a problem. It's actually, some of them are a lot better than what I had thought of, but it's just sort of an interesting learning experience of like, oh, you really got to communicate with your DP so that you guys are on the same page. And then I probably should have just taken more time to just watch the stuff afterwards, because I was really trusting him a lot to, like, we'd shoot it and then I'd say, hey, did you think it looked good? And if he did, then we would move on. And honestly, that ended up working out great. But basically, I think one of the main things I could have learned was just better prep time, better communication, and then just making sure that the communication on set was good, that I was looking at stuff when I needed to. It didn't really end up being that much of a problem because it turned out totally fine, and we had talked beforehand, so that was okay. I think one of the main things that ended up being interesting was just like learning how a music video worked, because I never filmed one before. And one thing that was super interesting about this is that there was the singing, but there was also talking, like, moments in between the singing. We sing, and then, like, talk and make some jokes, and then sing, and then talk and make some jokes. And we had decided... Oh, my wrist popped, like, really loud. It's just weird. We had decided that we didn't want to pre-record, because we were going to pre-record the singing and have it playing back. But we didn't want to pre-record all the talking, because that could change, like, in the space, and it's weirder to try to, like, mime and talk over speaking. So we decided to just do that there and get the live sound of that there. I didn't really know, like, okay, having music play back and you sing along to it, that's not that hard. But then how do you have music that plays and there's no talking, but you can't have the music playing while you're talking, because then it'll ruin the thing later.
The audio, yeah.
So what I just decided to do, and I just, like, timed it out, because we had sort of timed ours to be similar to the Angela Lansbury version. If anyone hasn't seen that, you should go watch that on YouTube. Angela Lansbury original Sweeney Todd, super great performance. That's Mrs. Potts is Mrs. Lovett.
Ooh.
Yeah, but we had timed it to that, so I would just kind of time it to their performance and just cut out the music. And then what I did so that we knew when the music would come back in is I just recorded that sound, like, on the beat right before the music came in. So it'd be quiet, and then all of a sudden, like, really loud, just this echoing. And like, once we had done it maybe 500 times, we got used to it. But the first few times where we, like, did it, it was so bad, because we'd still be talking, and then all of a sudden would, like, happen, and we're like, oh crap, shoot. So it was really tough, like, learning to time the speaking, and then everyone had an idea about, like, oh, well, what if we just did this? Like, what if you just had it so that we could pause it, but the problem was, like, well, I can't do that because we're already here, and I'd have to go, like, re-export the song and all that. And everyone's ideas were great, but it was just sort of a moment of, like, everyone trying to figure out how to work this. And part of the problem was that I didn't create the mix for the song until, like, the night before.
Ooh.
Yeah, because we just didn't have time. Danny and my work schedule didn't work out. So Danny and I hadn't really gotten a chance to practice. So that would be another thing I would change. We had been practicing the choreography, but we hadn't been able to practice singing along to the mix and figuring out the timing and all that. So if we could have done that even just, like, 2 or 3 times beforehand, that would have helped a lot. But we were doing it live and figuring it out. And we just sort of ended up basically having to, like, rehearse it in this space, which ended up wasting a little bit of time. So wish that we had practiced it beforehand. And I don't know if there's, like, a better system for having it pause and do that. It was Danny's idea to say, like, we'll just have a little bit of a pause, and then someone can just pause the music and then push play as soon as we're ready. And I think that probably would have been the best way to do it if I were to do it again. But we eventually figured out how those worked, and sometimes we just knew, like, okay, we're not going to be able to keep this as one take. We'll have to, because it keeps coming in too early, so let's start over from a different angle, but from the talking, and we'll get it, like editing
Yeah,
later, we'll fix it.
Movie magic.
Movie
That's
magic,
how that
yeah.
works. Yeah.
I like hated to be a person that was like, oh, we'll sort of fix it in editing later,
Well,
but
there's certain things. I mean, that's a little different than other stuff. Like
Yeah.
that's
yeah.
just kind of what you have to do.
But it was super weird because it was sort of a new. I had been a PA on a musical movie before, the Capstone Love Struck.
Oh gosh.
Yeah. And so I had seen how they did it. Like, they had the playback, and then certain moments where there wasn't music, they still had a metronome. And I was like, oh, I can do that. But then I realized, like, oh, no, wait, we can't have sound happening because we'll
With the
have
metronome
dialogue.
going,
yeah,
yeah.
like, so it was super awkward. And then it was really tough because, like, the music would happen and then suddenly it would be quiet. So we're, like, trying to act, but it's harder to have, like, that same amount of energy that you did before because the music's gone. And so we just, like, feel really stupid because we're like, oh, well, this what blah blah blah, and it's like there's no music going on, and you just feel really stupid because you're like, I'm being real theatrical right now, but it doesn't feel like it fits because there's no music happening. So you just had to, like, I mean, you can laugh, I'm very funny. Oh, well, I can't believe I have had a very interesting last couple days because then I'm editing it.
Mm-hmm.
And I have been editing it for about 3 days straight.
That's so much fun.
I mean, I don't get to edit very often, so it is pretty fun. But it's, it's like anyone that's edited for like a long time in a row knows that like your brain starts to like do really stupid, weird things. So that's why I'm like, I don't know, like suddenly super arrogant right now. I'm like, I'm amazing.
I just finished the rough cut of my music video. Like, what do you even know?
Yeah.
Who are you?
It's not even because of that. It's just this is like the first time that I have left the house, but it's not even my house. So we shot it in 4K, and my computer can't handle that. But Elizabeth has this super awesome computer that can handle like amazing 4K and is like great for editing. And Elizabeth and I have known each other for like 5 years. And so I have been living at her house for like 3 days. I'm going to admit, like, this is her shirt. And like, I hadn't actually like showered or changed my clothes in like 3 days because I like forgot to bring extra clothes with me. Like I was like, I'm going to go live at her house for a week, and then didn't bring like anything with me. And so when I knew I had to do the podcast, it was like the first time I had showered in a while. And I was like, can I use your shower? And she's like, yeah, of course. Please use the shower. And I literally actually just showered with my clothes on and was just like washing them with the body wash because they were like really dirty. And like I showered like with these pants on and washed them off, but then like blow dried them afterwards. Yeah.
How long does it take to blow dry jeans dry?
I mean, these are like mostly spandex.
Oh, okay.
They're jeggings. They're not real jeans. But like, just because I'm not saying you have to do this when you edit. This is just because I'm stupid and didn't plan ahead.
I don't know. I mean, like, you have to, I mean, especially when, like, early on you have limited resources and stuff. There's weird things you got to do. Now, showering with your clothes on, I wouldn't necessarily put in there.
I wouldn't suggest that, but, like, I didn't have any other clothes. Kind of a cool moment for me, because she's married to this guy, Josh, and then I'm married to Danny. And it was like, oh, this is kind of cool that we all have these trusting relationships where, like, I can, like, go sleep over at their house, and it's like I told Danny, and he would, like, didn't even bat an eye. He was like, oh, okay, cool. So good marriages are good things.
Good marriages all right. Well, we do need to start wrapping things up a bit. How would you like to share your like most awkward story experience that from the shoot?
Oh, from the shoot.
If you do from the shoot. From this
okay, so here's
project.
the thing. Here's the thing I haven't told anyone.
Delightful. Please share it for
so
all 40, 50 subscribers we have.
Yeah. So there was like a lot of weirdness in like getting the rental equipment and getting all that in place. Like we rented some lights and some sound equipment and other stuff. And first of all, it was like super awkward because I rented a U-Haul to pick it up, and the ramp on the U-Haul was like only just as big as the cart. So it was like there was just like all this craziness that went into getting the rental equipment. And it was amazing I got it all. And I was looking at all the stuff I had at my house. Sorry, that's a burp. That happens sometimes.
Did rotate
I like
equipment.
try so hard to have this image of like a put together professional person, and then like just don't. But so that other people can feel better about themselves. But it was like crazy trying to get all the stuff together and like going at home and like getting all the stuff I had at home. But we get there and we get to the location and I'm like, wow, this may be one of the first times that I like get somewhere and I've remembered all the important stuff. One of the key props we were going to have was flour everywhere because it's like a pie shop and we throw the flour in the air and we're talking about like laying the flour down. I suddenly look at my mom and I'm like, oh my gosh, I forgot to bring the flour. That wasn't a huge deal though because my dad just ran and got some. So like I currently have like 8 ginormous bags of flour at my apartment that I like never ended up using on the shoot because I forgot them. So I'm going to have to bake like a lot of bread or something. But the main thing is I thought when I rented this lighting cart that it came with like clips and grip tape and like, or gaff tape, whatever it's actually called, and all that stuff. And we're looking and it didn't have any on it. And I was like, they forgot to load this. Turns out the one I rented actually didn't come with those things. And that was just my bad for not knowing that. But I remembered thinking, I have gaff tape at home. And I thought to myself, I should bring this. And then I thought, nah, that rental thing's going to have gaff tape. And I get there and I'm like, I can't believe I forgot the flour and I forgot the gaff tape. Like there were so many things that I thought to bring and then didn't. And we go, it's like 2 days of shooting. And so my dad just runs out and buys like a bunch of duct tape to use. And it doesn't work great, but it works fine.
Kind of get it
and we don't have a ton of light, so it's not a huge deal. And we're packing up and we're like reloading the U-Haul. And then all of a sudden there's this like little box. And I was like, oh, what's this? And I look inside and it's my box of gaff tape. And I actually had brought it. I just didn't know because it was like in the back of the U-Haul behind other stuff. And so it was just like, and I didn't tell anyone. I just like put it on the truck and I was like, no one can see this box of gaff tape.
Oh my
Because
goodness.
I like made such a big deal of like, I left it at home and I should have brought it. And like, I don't know why I didn't bring it the second day. Like I didn't think to because we'd already put up the lights. We weren't really going to change anything. But it was like basically thinking that like, oh no, there is going to be with the gaff tape with, it was like this weird story of like, oh, there's going to be gaff tape with the rental. No, there isn't. Oh, I forgot to bring it. Oh, we don't have it. Let's get duct tape. Oh, it turns out that I had brought it and I did have it the entire time. We didn't have to waste like 2 hours like buying duct tape instead. It's just, I just like, I'm so, because I was just so stressed about getting it all set up. And then we had a lot of other people helping us. So it was like stuff was moving around at like alarming rates. But basically it was just like me not keeping track of like anything that I had and thinking that I had things and then thinking I didn't and then realizing I did and just,
Well, welcome to Clueless Filmmaking.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So basically, long story short, prep, write things down, and then like really keep track of what you're doing while you're doing it. Because it might turn out that you have gaff tape when you think you don't.
I like all of those things. Well, thank you, Michael. I'm really excited to see that video on
Me
Monday
too.
/ the same day. Yeah, if you're seeing this, the music video should be there. Go check it out on the channel. And while you're at it, hey, you should watch some of our other stuff. Give us a thumbs up. And why don't you try subscribing to the channel maybe if you haven't already?
Maybe
Because,
it's down here,
that'd
the
be
button.
fantastic. Oh, the button. It will be, well, no, it doesn't pop up yet.
You
It
can
pops
watch.
up after the video.
You can watch the
whatever.
music video
Anyway.
here. I don't know. Maybe there's like a thumbnail.
Sure. I'll
Yeah,
put it
we
in
can do
there.
that.
Anyway, hey, everybody. Thank you so much for watching. Have a fantastic day.